Hi, I'm Chad Kopotic, Quality Control Manager here at Deering Banjos. Today we're going to go over how to change the head on your Goodtime Banjo. Changing your banjo head is a very involved process. If you take your time and do it slowly, it's going to turn out great. Throughout this process, I'm going to reference other videos which are covered in our tech sections, like how to change your strings, how to tighten your head, how to adjust your co-rod. Once you've watched those and you reference those, changing your head and putting your banjo back together to get it as good as new is going to be real easy. Just make sure you take your time and go slow. There are quite a few tools and materials you're going to need to change your head. First off, you'll need a replacement head. For the Goodtime, we use in the factory a high crown frosted top head. Also, it's a good idea to change your bridge when you're changing your head. You're going to need a new pack of strings. Deering care cloth to polish your metal while it's off of the banjo makes it real easy. A 3/8 nut driver. A Phillips head screwdriver. 1/2-inch wrench. Small Allen wrench or small screwdriver that can fit inside the coordinator rod to hold it still while you remove it. A pair of clippers for the strings. A string winder. A 9/32 T-wrench. And your favorite tuner. There are a few reasons people change their heads. The first, obviously, being is it's worn out and it's time to be replaced. The way you can really tell it's time to replace your head is if the bottom edge of your head here is catching on the inside of your heel cut. There's a step inside that heel cut, and if your head is resting on it, it obviously can't be tightened anywhere beyond that, and it's definitely time to change your head. Another way to tell it's time to change is if you start wearing through the frosting and it becomes clear plastic, or if you want to experiment with different tones that different types of heads can give you. The first step in replacing your head is to start dismantling your banjo. We're going to take this banjo completely apart and put it all the way back together and get it set up. The first step to doing that is get your Phillips head screwdriver and remove the 4 screws that go through the flanges into your resonator. If you have an open back banjo, you can obviously skip this step and move on to the next ones. Once you've removed the screws, carefully pick up the banjo and remove the resonator. Nice thing about removing the resonator is now you have a nice little bowl to keep all your bits, parts, and pieces as you take it apart. The next step in taking apart the banjo is going to be removing the strings in the old bridge. For that, I'll remove a little tension with my string winder. Lift up the strings and remove the bridge, and use my string cutters to get rid of the old strings. After we remove the strings, we're going to turn the banjo over and start removing the parts that connect the neck to the pot. Inside, I'm going to use my 1/2-inch wrench to remove this outside nut that holds the tailpiece on the banjo. Now I'm going to work on removing the coordinator rod. For that, I use my 1/2-inch wrench, loosen this inside nut and back it off, and then take my small Allen wrench through the hole in the coordinator rod and unscrew it from the neck. Carefully remove it, set it in the resonator, carefully lift the banjo, set the tailpiece to the side. Now the only thing holding the banjo together is this 3/8 nut on the other hanger bolt inside the pot. Take our handy nut driver, carefully remove that nut, holding the neck and pot assemblies together. Gently separate the two. And put the washers that were on the hanger bolts inside your bowl. Now we're going to work on disassembling the pot assembly so we can get to the head and change it out. The only thing we're going to need to do that is a 9/32 T-wrench. We're going to slowly start loosening up the hooks, working our way around until we can take the nuts off the hooks with our fingers. Now that we have them loose, we'll back them off all the way and set them in our bowl, one by one. If your banjo is equipped with an armrest, make sure the two hooks attaching the armrest stay aside from the rest of the hooks, because they can have an extra little bend to them to fit the armrest properly to the pot, and they need to be reinstalled with the armrest. Once we get to our last one, set the flanges to the side, and we're ready to move the old head. Remove the tension hoop from the head, take your old head, throw it in the trash. At this point, it's real easy, because the metal pieces are off your banjo, to go through with one of our care cloths and polish up your metal. Get all the fingerprints off of it and all the normal kind of road grime that you get on it from playing it. The inside here, the white material, is impregnated with some wax. It's really good for polishing the nickel, gold, and chrome plating that we put on all of our banjos. You want to just gently start rubbing it and wiping all that stuff off, and you'll see it just start get shiny. Once you have all your metal parts nice and shiny, you're ready to put the pot back together. We're going to go ahead, grab our new head and our tension hoop. The tension hoop, you'll notice, has a weld seam. That's where we roll and join the hoop together. We like to put that seam underneath the tailpiece so it's covered and you can't see it when the banjo is fully assembled. The head has the Deering logo on it. We like to try and center that up with the strings so that when you have it all together, it looks nice and clean. The way we center that up is when we put it on the banjo pot, we line the line of the R up with the holes in the pot that the neck's going to mount to. That will get us nice and centered in between the strings so everything looks nice and clean when it's all put back together. We'll take that weld seam and put it right above the coordinator rod hole, so when the tailpiece is on it, it's hidden and doesn't look unsightly. We're now ready to start adding the flanges, the hooks, and the nuts. To do this requires a little patience and a little finesse, and you want to take it nice and slow, don't rush it, so that as you put it together, the head tension down nice and evenly, and everything goes together really smooth. The way we're going to do that is we're going to start with 1/2 of the flange at a time. You'll notice that each side of the flange, one side is flat, one side has a notch cut in it. The side with the notch cut in it is going to go around the tailpiece end. The flat side is going to go up against the neck. So we want to set it underneath the corresponding shoes and get it ready to start putting hooks in. I'll add one hook at a time, working my way slowly around the pot, getting it barely finger tight, just so it starts holding this flange in place. Then we'll do the same with the other half. When we get to the armrest position, we're going to skip that first armrest hook and move to the one that'll be in the middle of the armrest. We'll come back after we have all the hooks on and we're starting to tighten them down with our T-wrench and add the armrest and those two hooks. ready to add our second flange. We can go ahead and get that lined up to where the flat is going to be against the neck and the notch piece is going to be around the tailpiece. Once we have them loosely on, we're going to go through and add the two that correspond with the armrest. Make sure those are the slightly bent ones so that the armrest fits back on nice and evenly. Before we put the armrest on, it's a good idea, go ahead and wipe it down, get it all polished up. Using the two hooks with the slight bend in it, go ahead and start attaching the armrest. Once the armrest is on, now we're going to go through and finger tighten all of these hooks, and then we'll move on to using our T-wrench. Want to make sure that you're getting a nice even tension to where the nut just starts hitting the bottom edge of that flange. And then we can really start working on tightening this down, getting the head nice and even, and the tension sweet, so that when you play it, all that life that comes back like it was new. Once we finish tightening it with our fingers, we're going to move on to our T-wrench. I like to tighten the head using a crisscross pattern, starting with these two hooks up by the neck, moving straight across to these two hooks down by the tailpiece, skip two of the hooks, move to these two hooks, and straight across to the other two hooks. This will start stretching out that tension hoop, getting it to sit on your head nice and even, getting the head to start to come down nice and evenly. We want to go 1 to 2 turns at a time, taking our time, don't rush it. If we rush it, we have the possibility of putting the tension hoop off center and getting our head uneven. If our head's uneven, our tone's uneven. We want that head nice and crisp and even. Bring that pop back to the banjo. Once I've got my cross started, I'm going to go ahead and move to the other hooks that I haven't tightened yet, tightening them two at a time. And you'll notice as you tighten one hook, the hooks right next to it are going to loosen up. That's okay. We're going to keep going around doing that same pattern until all the hooks get nice and even and feel tight. If we thump our head, we're getting a real sloppy woo 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 sound. We want to tighten our head till we get that crisp crack, that pow pow pow, like a snare snap when you hit it with your thumb. You can hear that snap starting to come into it. It's still a little hollow behind it, so we're going to go around one more time, see if we can get it to get super crisp. As you're tightening it, you may hear some creaks and groans and snaps and cracks. That's normal, that's the head settling in. You're stretching plastic over a drum, and that plastic needs to stretch and get tight, so all those little creaks and cracks are okay. As long as you don't hear any big pows, that's when you broke your head, and you need to start over. So, nice and easy, little cracks are okay, big cracks, not okay. Time to call us and get a new head. That snap, that's what you're looking for right there. If you keep tightening your head, that snap's not going to get any better. You're just going to overstretch your head and wear it out prematurely. So you really want to stop and check that you're getting that crisp pop and that you're not overstretching your head. Otherwise you're going to have to change it a lot sooner. Now that I have that head to tension, I'm going to go ahead and reattach the neck, get the tailpiece on, and start stringing it up. Once I've strung it up, I'm going to go around again, make sure the head's tightened up, and it's going to give the head a little chance to stretch and move, and so it's really going to settle on the pot when we do our final tensioning, it's going to be sweet. Now we have the pot flipped over and ready to grab the neck. I'm going to take the 2 hanger bolts, slide them into those holes in the pot, and grab our washers out of our handy bowl and add the little 3/8 nut to the hanger bolt that's closest to the head. Going to get it finger tight. Use our nut driver. We don't want to crank it down just yet. I want to put a little bit of pressure on it so we can flip it over and make sure that our fingerboard is going to be nice and parallel with the head. If our fingerboard is cockeyed from the head, what's going to happen is your string action is going to be way off. So we want to make sure that the fingerboard and the head are nice and parallel. I'll sight down the head and just gently twist that fingerboard side to side until it's nice and even all the way across with the head. We'll flip it back over, use that nut driver, and give it a final tension. And go ahead and tighten it pretty tight. So you want that joint between the neck and the pot to be super snug so that there's no tone loss because of a loose neck. Now we're going to attach the coordinator rod. Add the washers. At this part, if you have flanges, you need to add your tailpiece at the same time you're adding your coordinator rod. Good time to wipe down the tailpiece with no strings on it, so we can keep it as nice and clean as our brand new head. When we add the tailpiece, we're going to flip it upside down, pull the coordinator rod back so it's just sticking out of the pot. Slide the tailpiece up and hook it over that part of the coordinator rod. Stick the coordinator rod through and add the outside nut a few turns so that it doesn't hit the flanges when we try and tighten it. Then as we screw it onto the coordinator rod, we need to watch that nut. Make sure it's not tightening against the tailpiece as you're tightening the coordinator rod, because it'll make it feel like the coordinator rod's getting tight, but it's really that nut jamming up on it. So now we get our Allen wrench and slowly start tightening it. And remember, you want to get this nice and snug so that neck is really firmly on the pot. And for now, we're just going to barely finger tighten these 2 nuts against the pot so they're not rattling around while we're setting it up. We're going to go ahead and flip it over. And now we're ready to add our new strings and our brand new bridge. The reason we're adding a brand new bridge right now is because over time, as your head starts to sag and move around, the bridge can take that sag and kind of get bent into the bridge. And that'll give you a really weird low action on your middle strings and higher action on your outside strings. So refreshing your bridge is going to refresh the entire banjo along with your new head. We'll get our brand new bridge ready to go and a pack of light gauge strings. We use light gauge on the Goodtimes because the neck is not a reinforced neck, and that gauge of string we put together really breathes life into the banjo. When stringing these banjos up, I always start with the 3rd string, if it's a 5-string banjo. If it's a 4-string banjo, a tenor or a plectrum, we'll start with the outside 2 strings. What that's going to do is it's going to help me get the bridge set on there nice and easy as I put the rest of the strings on. Also, on the 5-string, we're going to be threading it through this little hole in the tailpiece, and that's very difficult to do with the rest of the strings in the way. So grab our 3rd string, uncoil it, and gently slide it through that hole and out over the head. Be careful when you're threading that string through that you go nice and slow, because that string can scratch the head if you try and force it down through that hole. Hook the loop on. and wrap our string. For more details on how we wrap our strings, watch our other video on how to restring your banjo. It'll go over it in much more detail. After I've added the third string, I'm going to add the bridge right now because it's a lot easier to do with one string on it than with 5 strings on it. Set it on there so that the string isn't cockeyed side to side or anything, and that the bridge is nice and firmly planted on the head. Now we're going to add our 1st and 5th string. Once we have our strings on, we're ready to go through, start tuning it up, setting the intonation, doing our final tension on the head. So now we're close to in tune. We want to start to work on setting our intonation by checking our open note on the D strings with the closed note on the 12th fret. I'm a little flat, so I need to slide the bridge up towards the neck a little bit. Every time you move the bridge, you're going to have to retune a little bit. Get that string back in pitch. Went a little too far. That happens, don't worry. You can slide the bridge back a little bit. Perfect. Now we're going to go through, the head's had a little time to kind of settle in. I'm going to go through and tighten it up again. At this point, I'll start up by the neck, just work my way around one hook at a time. Going to be turning each hook about half a turn at a time till they really feel nice and even. You'll find some are a little looser than others and some are a little tighter than others. The ones that are tight is what you want to bring the rest of the hooks up to. For those of you that have a really good musical ear, we're trying to get a G sharp note out of the head when we hit it. Now that we've gone through and tightened them all up, that crisp pop is what we're looking for, a nice good snap. So when we play it, those notes are nice and clean and separate and they pronounce themselves really well. So now that we have our head to tension and we've done our final tune and checked our intonation, we need to double check our action is where it should be. We like to set it at 1/8 of an inch from the top of the 22nd fret to the bottom of your 1st string. I have an 1/8 inch gauge here, which is just an 1/8 inch drill bit. I'll slide that right underneath the string, and if that string moves, I need to adjust the action a little bit. The good times, you'll have noticed when you took the neck off that the 2 holes that the neck bolts go through are slotted a little bit. What we're going to do is use that to our advantage and slide the neck down from the pot just a little bit to get that action just right. To do that, we're going to flip it back over. We're going to back off the tension that we finger tightened these 2 nuts to. We're going to loosen up our coordinator rod about a full turn. And we're going to do the same with that little 3/8 nut. You'll notice that the neck has a little wiggle to it. I'm going to take and try and slide that neck down in those slots all the way to the bottom and then retighten the neck. First, by tightening that 3/8 nut. Second, by checking, making sure our fingerboard is still parallel with the head. and then going through and tightening up the coordinator rod. We'll go ahead and finger tighten those two nuts together and recheck our action. And it's right where it needs to be, which is perfect. Now we're going to use our 1/2" wrench and our little Allen wrench. And we're going to snug down these two nuts. Even turns inside and out, so we're not putting any undue pressure on the pot. And for more information how to manipulate and adjust the co-rod, you can check out our other video on how to manage that system. Once we have that all tightened up, ready to go, we're going to go ahead and put the resonator back on and get to playing. When we put the resonator on, we want to make sure that we start the screws a few threads all the way around and then go ahead and tighten them down. If we tighten one screw down all the way, we're not going to have any wiggle room to get the rest of the screws in those lugs nice and easy. Once we tighten down our last screw, ready to give it one final wipe down, just to get all the fingerprints off that we put on it while we're putting it together. And now we've successfully changed our head, changed our strings, changed our bridge, set the banjo back up. We're ready to play it like it was brand new. Now that you're done changing your head, make sure you check back at DeeringBanjos.com. We'll have other tech videos up. Also, please send us your suggestions for any tech videos you'd like to see. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram for further updates about Deering products and Deering events. Thanks for watching.